All right, welcome to another episode at the Real Estate Operator Podcast. My name is Steve Olson. I'm joined by my long-term friend, Mr. Alex Bracke. Alex is the founder of Valor Group, huge real estate team that he's scaling over on the East Coast, somewhere over there. It's outside of San Diego is all that I know. And he's also the founder of Listing Jet Fuel. If you guys are looking to run ads for your listings to give yourself an unfair advantage for everything that you do from a marketing presentation to your sellers, you should check out Listing Jet Fuel. More on that later. Alex, thank you so much for joining me. I've known you for quite a long time. I've seen you through many different markets, many different things that you've done, right? And you're crushing it right now, which I'm super excited to have you on for this. But one of the things that you and I share in common, and I'm once removed from it, yours is the life of a police officer and everything that comes along with it, right? You from the perspective that you were a police officer for a long time, loved it, transitioned from being a police officer into real estate, which we'll talk about here in a second. I grew up as a father who was half his career was in the SWAT team, the other half was a homicide detective, and my mom worked in communications and 911 to be specific. And if you've never grown up with parents that are police officers, and my dad was a police officer, and then my mom was like kind of a police officer by default, if you want to call it that, right? You never knew who the cop was at any given time. It's a different upbringing, right? You see the world through a lens that most people don't see it through. You tend to see things that still to this day, I've been away from Phoenix for 10 years. I haven't lived with my parents since I was 18. I had a great upbringing. My parents are awesome. I'm super close with them, but you see things through a different lens, right? And you tend to see things a little bit before they happen. You're a little bit more alert. You just see things that I think the general public doesn't see. So anytime that I ever meet anybody that was in that profession or is currently in it, like there's something different in a good way. Alex, I don't know if I shared this with you. Back during my Tom Ferry days, I was in a coaches meeting very early on. And I think I was maybe there a couple of years and we were having, I don't even know what the meeting was about, right? Maybe 10 of us in the room. And everybody was talking about like our dream coaching clients. And they were going around and somebody said, like huge teams and luxury agents or the cold callers or the lead generators. And I said, you know what? I think it's police officers and divorced wives, like newly divorced women. And everybody's That's like, unique. What? Yeah. And I said, you know what's funny? And I can give you gosh, now that I'm thinking about it, I've coached a lot of ex-cops. And even during my Keller Williams days, like the masterminds that I were in, I'm Dan, I can't remember Dan's last name at Keller Williams. Gosh, he was also a Tom Ferry coach, but ex-cop. I think he got out due to injury, right? Really similar situation. And he came into real estate. And I remember he told me, he's like, do you know why police officers are so successful in real estate? And I said, no. He goes, because like all the stuff that you're worried about, like doesn't come with a gun. And I'm like, okay, that totally, he goes, you're nobody's going to shoot me over making a cold call or doing any of it. He goes, man, hopefully they won't. And so it was always a really interesting thing. And then newly divorced, and you could say males as well, but I just didn't have any newly divorced males because there was just like something to prove and they went after it and they just, it was no BS, right? So I have a lot of respect for you. I've seen a whole bunch, I feel like we connect on that level, even though none of my parents' kids, my brothers, none of us went into the police department. I don't know if it was because we didn't like it or what, or maybe we grew up with it. Who knows, right? Okay, let's talk about, most people would think like, okay, well, I come from law enforcement and I want to sell homes and, law enforcement, every division of law enforcement, whether it's local or national, military, whatever, they're very they work within. Do you agree or disagree with that?
No, totally.
Meaning,
that's 100%.
It's a very tight-knit community, right? You always know, everybody that I know that's in law enforcement is all their friends are in law enforcement. And I think military is the same way because there's an element of lack of identity outside of that community, right? Because you
that's just
even with musicians, drummers are their own little people in the corner because they're just different, right? And so I can totally appreciate that. You found a way to create a niche when you came into the business because you realized that there was something missing in the market. Will you do me a favor and share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's actually two parts to this. Number one, and you're right, cops, we tend to, right or wrong, we often tend to only trust other cops. We see the world through very jaded lenses. And so I knew when I was leaving policing and going into business that I really wanted to stay connected. And I felt like this is a really good niche for me to serve. But I found while I was a cop, there were two things. One was there was a way that I noted definitely did not work. And that was, I won't name the program, but there's a program that their whole thing is, hey, the agent, the lender, they want to give back to the community, and they do so by kicking out like some like closing cost assistance, that
That's right.
idea.
Just throw money at the problem.
Right. And so here's the problem with that is I would work, and whenever we got injured, we had to stay at the station. And so I would interact with these people and say, hey, here's the new one this week that showed up with their flyer. And we'll asking if we would put it up, and that was the pitch. And what they never realized was that we always took that flyer they gave us and we threw them all in the trash. Because the thing is that population, they're not money motivated oftentimes. If they were, they wouldn't be cops or firefighters or teachers, so the idea that you can win them over by throwing money at them makes them simply not trust you, right? Because now you're not like them. And so I knew that if I was going to try to connect with that community on like a business level, I had to provide a value that wasn't simply throwing money at them. And what I recognized when I was buying a house as a cop, I did a lot of work with drugs. That was my niche. And so I came into contact with folks that, weren't awesome people. And I really didn't like this idea that when I bought a house, my name and home address were going to be tied together in land records, searchable for free on the internet by anyone who wanted to find out where my wife and kids slept. And so I, kind of researched online as a cop. I wasn't even an agent at the time, and came up with something that I thought was a solution. I took it to my then real estate agent. I took it to my lender, to my title company, and they all looked at me like I had 6 heads. And so when I went, and like most cops do, I went out and bought the house and just, resigned to deal with the problem. When I became a real estate agent, though, that was the very first thing I did, is I created what became known as the Homes for Cops program, where I helped people, cops, and then it expanded to beyond cops, prosecutors, defense attorneys, special forces, military. I helped people buy a home without putting their name on the tax record, so that they couldn't necessarily be searched by bad guys, but also for like cops, they couldn't be searched by civil attorneys looking to see if maybe there's somebody worth suing, that had money that could cough it up. So that was a really easy way for me to provide a value, solve a problem that like legitimately that population has, and they don't realize there's even a solution for it. And help me stay connected to them. So, I would pay for the legal instrument that made that all happen. And, that was my way to give back, and it spread like wildfire. We to this day, here I am, 11, 12 years later, and I still use it regularly.
It's interesting that you bring up the civil part. There's an agent in my market, not to be used by name, but he's one of the top agents in the country. And he developed a home, not far from us. And I don't know what it's worth. Probably, actually, just listed it for sale. I do know what it's worth. But let's say somewhere between $6 and $8 million. And I remember when this home went up, I just Googled the address and not knowing whose it was. And it was this agent's home. And I'm thinking like, the number one agent or one of the top agents in all of Southern California didn't even title his home correct, because with one Google search, and so you would think that like as a real estate agent, something where I don't think that we're definitely subject to lawsuits. One of the biggest ones that ever happened was due to real estate agents. And you would think that like we would know better to like put stuff in trust and, how to blind, all of the stuff out, because I don't know about you. If I feel like I've been wronged by another real estate agent, I do a Google search and I see this agent owns an $8 million home or a $6 million home, however much it's worth, like I'm probably a little bit more inclined to say, hey, well, maybe we should, file papers and see where this goes, right? Have you ever read the book, The Story, Building Your Story Brand by Donald Miller?
I have. It was a while ago. So, I listened to it on audiobook, so I can't say I really read it per se.
So one of the things that I've seen Don speak a handful of times at various different conferences. And one day he had somebody come up on stage who was really struggling with their like elevator pitch. And he gave them a really simple framework. And he said, the framework is really easy. And he said, you illustrate a pain point, get buy-in, solve the pain point, right? And so like without you even knowing that you did this, you had your one-liner right in that little speech. And I almost cut you off, and I should have, because it was at the end of what you just said. But like the example that he gave up there, if we were to apply to real estate, people would be at a happy hour and they'd say, what do you do for work? Oh, I'm a real estate agent. And instantly, like people by default, we automatically go to the challenges that we know about that given, thing. So if somebody were to say like, I'm in this industry, I'm in insurance, or I'm in finance, or I'm on Wall Street, or I do this. Most of the time we think about, okay, what headline can I think of recently? And if we're thinking of headlines, they're probably negative, right? So when you say I'm a real estate agent, people are like, oh, I heard inventory was going up or rates are so high. Are you doing okay? It must be really hard. And now you're like, I'm doing fine. Like, what the hell are you talking about? You know? And so we feel like we have to recover, right? Have you ever been stuck in that situation before?
Totally. 100%.
Yeah. And just the other day, somebody said, you're in real estate, right? I have a question about this home in Delmar. I'm like, well, I don't sell locally. They're like, is it because of how bad it's getting? And I'm like, no, not at all. And so it's just weird where people's things go. So if you read the book, The Story Brand by Donald Miller, he'll say that a way to say that is to just use that pain point against them. And a way that would look like would be something to the effect of, hey, do you know how since COVID inventories doubled, interest rates have stayed high and the market seems to have stalled? Now you brought it out there. They can't bring that up, and you took the ugly goat and said, here it is, let's sacrifice it together. That's a weird example. I just watched Gladiator 2 last night, so it's like my head is still a little violent. Great movie, by the way. Not as good as the first one, but it is a great movie. So do you know how there's like more inventory, interest rates are really high, and homes seem to be slower to sell? And they say, yeah, I've heard that on the news. Well, we've developed a process that helps homes sell in as little as 7 days for a record price without all the stress, and we do that about 20 times a month. Now what we've done by giving that one-line elevator pitch to somebody is they instantly allow us to we allow them to take us and put ourselves in a totally different bucket. We're no longer like every other real estate agent out there, right? And I think with you, it's the same thing. Hey, do you know how when police officers buy a home, sometimes they could be subject to unnecessary pain because their address and everything they have is public? Well, we've developed a process to allow law enforcement to purchase real estate here in Northern Virginia and surrounding areas without the public knowing where they live, creating safety for them and their families. We do that about 15 times a month. Now all of a sudden they're like, I'm in law enforcement, and never really realized that was a problem. But now that you bring that up, and I'm sure everybody realizes that's a problem, but now that you bring that up, it's instantaneous. Like there is a solution that I am now attaching Alex to. No longer right. Alex is one of where you live, how many agents are there? Do you have any idea?
Oh God. Virginia is the 4th highest per capita in the nation for real estate agents. So I don't know how many that is, but it's that.
So there's a lot. I should Google this in Southern California. It's a lot. It's like 70,000 or something in San Diego County. I don't even think 70,000 homes sell a year here. I could be wrong on that. I should look that number up. But, there's all this people saying like, oh, you need to go to college to be a real estate, or we should make it harder. I don't think we should make it harder. And the reason why, I've never said this publicly, so Alex, if I get roasted for this, sorry that you have to be the person I do this with. But I don't think it should be easier, because I think the easier it is to get in, the easier it is to push people out, right? So I don't know if you were any different. When I got my license, it was February of 2007. It was Martin Luther King weekend. I passed the test at Friday at 3:00. I literally drove my Mercedes C-Class across the entire valley of Phoenix, Arizona. I had just quit radio advertising. I went to my broker and I said, okay, I just passed my test, activate my license. And she said, I can't, they're already closed. And I'm like, no, you have to do it right now, because what if I sell a home this weekend? And she goes, Steve, don't worry about it. And I said, okay, can I have your login to the zip forms? And she goes, no, you can't have my login to zip forms. And I said, okay, well, when I need to write a contract, can I call you? And she goes, yes, you can call me 24 hours a day and I will write a contract for you this weekend. We were already flipping homes at the time. So it's not like I was like brand new. And there were deals that I was working on right now. So I wasn't like super green, but of course the whole weekend went by and then I didn't sell a home, right? So then Monday comes around. I call her like at 8:05. Hey, can you hop on the website and get me active? She goes, it's Martin Luther King Day. They're closed. And I remember throwing and I was 27 years old, right? I threw a huge fit about that whole process. But what I think a lot of people get into real estate is they think like, I like people, I like homes, and it would be cool to make money liking people and like homes, so why don't I go do real estate? And then they get in and it's like nobody told me you don't sleep at night. Nobody told me about all the stress. Nobody told me that on any given day, at any given minute, for any given reason, a deal can fall apart. And I can go from having my best day in the world to the worst. And I've had this happen. I had a deal cancel, Alex, once at 11:56 p.m. on a multi-million-dollar multifamily deal that financially I needed to close. And I was at a Suns game when this happened. No, we were at a we were eating dinner after a Suns game, and I looked on my BlackBerry Pearl, if you remember those phones way back from the day, and I see this email come through, and it says cancellation notice. I was on the buy side; he'd canceled the deal, and I remember looking at my business partner, thinking like, "This is it. I got to go get a job." Like I went from being like, "This is going to be my highest sale I've ever closed. I'm on cloud 9" to like, "Oh shit, what am I going to do?" Right?
You went from hero to zero. Yeah,
that's right. And it's, what's funny is I think that's necessary in our business. I think that is a necessary evil because it builds resilience. I got licensed literally, and not because there was a run. We were already flipping homes, and I have family in real estate. I just happened to time it wrong, in regards to where the market was falling. But it's funny, I just talked about this the other day with a friend of mine. I don't know that I would have had the success that I had in real estate, Alex, had I have not got licensed at the beginning of that downturn. If I would have gotten licensed at the beginning of the upturn, like maybe in 03 or 04, and participated through that run, I don't think I'd still be in the business, because I don't know that I would have been able to grasp, how to sell on the way down, because it was so easy on the way up. And I see a lot of people right now that got licensed in 2018. They went through that COVID market. Everything went crazy. Everything was over. They just had to get listings. They were making money. And I know a lot of real estate agents right now are like, I know I need to market, but I don't know what to do.
Well, they never had to develop the skills, right?
That's right.
That's really key part, right? Is the folks that had to from day one establish behaviors, routines, whatever to win in the crappy market. When the market turns good, look, they have their behaviors and routines already set.
That's
and
right.
So, but if you get in the industry when it's good and you don't to lay that foundation, then your house of cards just crumbles.
That's right.
I think you're exactly right. I think a lot of folks are realizing that now, that like crap, like they actually need a value proposition, right? They're going to compete. It's not just as simple as, hey, how you doing? Here's the house. Like, voila, $20,000. That's not how this works.
I think there probably comes with so on our team we had a team meeting the other day, and somebody said, I want to go into this market, but I'm nervous that this one agent, I think she said this guy has like 70% market share. I said that's absolutely impossible. That does not exist anywhere in the entire country. Nobody has 70% market share unless they only cover one street and there's turnover on that street, right? And so she did some research. She goes, oh, okay, well, we only have X amount of homes, and this guy has like 3.9%. He's by far number one. And I said, listen, your competition is not the number one agent. You don't need the number one agent who has 4% market share to go down to 2 for you to sell 100 homes a year. Your competition is the client who's going to use their brother-in-law or their ex-wife or their old coworker at work or their neighbor or somebody they met at an open house. It is the one-off agents that you are competing against, because that is your number one source of competition. You don't even need to worry about the top agent. The top agent does not need to sell less homes for you to sell more. I don't care what market you're in, right? With the exception of maybe a Homely Hills, Beverly Hills, not even La Jolla, Rancho Santa Fe, maybe certain parts of Manhattan. I'm talking like ultra wealth, right? There are some who knows who type deals in there. But in the rest of the market, your competition is that one-off agent. And somewhere along the line, we were told a couple things. That the number one reason that people choose us as a real estate agent is due to our pedigree and our experience. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'd love to hear your opinion on this. I don't think people care, because if they did care, that agent that does 2 deals a year would do 0 forever. Like somebody would go and say, what do you mean you only sold 1 home so far this year? Right? Like, you must not know what you're doing. I'm not going to use you. But that doesn't happen.
And I can totally relate to this, because I'm a very, you're very analytical. I'm very analytical, right? I make very logical based decisions. And so I thought for a long time, we
make very thought out decisions, maybe not logical decisions. We make very thought out decisions, but keep going.
That's fair. That's a fair distinction.
Yeah.
So I made my pitches early on with the idea that clients cared at all how many homes I had sold, what percent of list price to sale price, nobody cares. Like, nobody cares about that stuff. What they do care about is what solution do you provide them specifically. The fact that you've sold 100 homes may be great, but that doesn't solve a specific acute problem they have.
That's right. It's so we see at the end of the year, we have this real trends thing that's out that, by the way, people have to pay to be on, which is an entirely different effing problem. And then they didn't make enough money on that, so they made another one that was different called America's Best or whatever. And then So, and what happens is, and look, if people are willing to pay for something, this is capitalism at its best. People should charge for it. And I'm totally cool with that. So don't take this as me, bashing. I'm not a rankings person, right? And not like I'm ferociously competitive, but only when everything's on an even playing field. And what I mean by that is if there's a centralized database with all the data and the data can't be manipulated, then I'm all for rankings, because then it exposes, and there is some value in somebody who really understands a specific niche type of product, right? Like, I'm sure if you talked about your Homes for Cop plan and somebody says, well, okay, cool, how many people have you helped doing this? And you say, well, none. I just thought of it last night after a couple of glasses of wine. There's going to be, even though it's a great offer, there's going to be an issue there, right? So performance does matter, but it's not the leading indicator. I think what a lot of people are really concerned about is, I know there's going to be trauma. I know there's going to be blood. I know we're going to be in the middle of the battlefield and somebody's going to have to pick me up. Do I trust you enough for that to be you? I think that's all it boils down to. And will the transaction get easier over time? Yes, I do. I think we don't need to get into AI in this call by any means, but I think with AI and having the ability to comb contracts and identify things that largely were due to human, oversight and error in the past, I think is going to get fixed. There's no national contract. There's no national platform. All these things have to happen for this conversation, this transaction to get easier. When somebody is unique, their only choice is to deliver on the promise. That's it. So I have a promise. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to deliver on it, or I'm not. And if I'm not, then you can have your opinion. But if I do, you can have your opinion, right? It works both ways. Mm-hmm. For somebody who's getting into the business right now, they just got their license like last week. It's the end of fourth quarter right now. The market's kind of slowing down for a month. And then, what we know to happen once January, whatever passes, when Trump takes office or a regime change happens, the real estate market tends to just kind of do what it's always done and take off behind there. So if I'm brand new right now and I have no idea what makes me different, is there anything that you would tell somebody joining your team, like, this is what I would look into? Like, how would you help somebody identify what that niche is?
So I think it's leaning into whoever you are personally. Like, where did you come from? What's your identity, right? I mean, my identity is I'm a former cop, right? Raised in a military family. Like, so I tend to identify. I walk, talk, act like that persona. Other people, look, everybody, just human beings, like to do business with people that are like them. And so, my value proposition is going to look probably really different than other people's. And that's cool because, there are a lot of people who, they're not going to identify with this need to like protect their name and home address. Like, that's just not a concern on their radar. And for the folks that do, right, they're going to be more naturally attracted to me. So for each individual agent, it's hard to say like, hey, what should your thing be? I don't know. It depends who you are, what your background is. And, like if you're all about like crocheting or something, like, I don't know, make a value proposition surrounding that. Like what's a pain point for people that crochet? I have no idea. I think if you're brand new and you don't have one of those that's obvious, right? I think number one, you need to think about how to get there. What is the reason that somebody should hire Steve Olson? Steve Olson is the only guy that does what? So be working on that. But in the meantime, fall back on what is the value proposition of your team? If you're not on a team, what's the value proposition of your brokerage, right? Like, find something that you can point to that makes you different from potentially whoever else the client is interviewing. And I think that's the most critical piece, is figure out something that sets you apart. Even if it's not unique to you personally, make it unique somehow.
I'm thinking back to a mastermind. Keller Williams, everything's a mastermind, right? So back in the Phoenix days, this new one that my OP had put together. There's maybe 10 of us in the room. We're on a round table and we were talking about how to identify, new sources of like a COI or a geographical farm. Kenny Klaus, who's actually a agent at Real now, was in our office back then. Kenny owned like every zipcode.com in Gilbert at the time. Still a monster agent, was a monster, but we're going back like 15 years. Monster agent back then, and there was an agent in that room, and she goes, I'm going to work with musicians. And I remember thinking like, well, I'm a musician, like that's kind of weird. And so just being the dumbass that I am, I just said, that's never going to work. And she goes, really? I have 9 under contract right now. How many do you have? And I said, okay. And I'm like, I don't have 9, but touche, and I'll shut my mouth. And I fully acknowledge, I won't use her name, and I know she's not watching this, but if she does, this is the only way that I know how to apologize. I knew that at that age, when I said that, like, I didn't mean anything negative about it. It's just this, my type D, personality came out and said, hey, I'm trying to help you. So I'm going to get right to the point. But I learned in that moment that, because I had this belief of like, well, all the musicians, even though I was signed and, we did regional touring and all that stuff, everybody was broke. Everybody that I knew in the music industry was broke. And what I heard her say was that I am going to sell homes to touring musicians. What she said is, if you like to play music, that is our identity factor. It doesn't mean that music is your employer. It doesn't mean that you're signed to a band. And so that was an eye-opening moment for me, in the sense of, it wasn't even about the career choice. It was about, hey, if your number one thing that you're excited about every day is music, whether you're a guitar player, a drummer, or she was a singer, then we have that too. And she dressed like a rock star every single day, like professional, but she knew cool. And she was in a band. She's an amazing singer. And so I remember thinking like, okay, well, if she can make this work, then there is almost any niche you can go after, right?
Any niche. And this is the cool thing, man, is that like, there's really two ways to tackle it. One is like a cultural niche, right? Like, so being the musician, right? It doesn't actually inherently solve a problem in the real estate space.
That's right.
But people like to do business with people that are like them. So
You're 100% right.
If you are like the musician real estate agent, then other musicians are going to be more attracted to working with you, right? I think it becomes even more powerful when you can not only, kind of embody that niche culturally, but then also have like solve a problem for that niche, right? It's like a extra power behind it. So, being able to be, the Valor Group and have, be able to walk the walk and talk the talk in that niche, but then also have a solution to the problem that they face, man, that's super powerful, right? You lose any discussion about, well, how many homes did you sell this year? What's your commission rate? Like, because it's a foregone conclusion. Like, I have people that call me moving across the country, have never met me, right? But they see that in my headshot, I have the thin blue line, right? Yep. It's a pro police symbol. I have that in there. They see I'm the Valor Group. They see that I do this thing, and they're like, I don't even know you, but we're working together. And it's the easiest hit.
There was how every law enforcement agency has like a what's the word called? What's the community they're all part of? The community of people. No, it's like what protects you. And my gosh, my brain's fried right now.
Union?
Yeah, union. Yeah. So I can't remember what the union was called in Phoenix, like KOA, something like that. I know those are the initials, and there was a number after. And what we realized is on a lot of police officer cars, they had this KOA thing on it. And I remember this kid at school when I was in high school just wrote KOA on his license plate with a permanent marker. Forever, I noticed, I'm like, hey, why is that written on your license plate? And he goes, I don't know, my neighbor's a cop, and they all have these like KOA license plate. I'm like, That means I think they're part of a union. And he goes, no, they put it on there so they don't get pulled over. I'm like, no, I don't think I think it's just like an identity thing. And I'm sure it helps. And lo and behold, he ended up getting pulled over, and the cop asked about it. Are you in the police department? And he said no. And he goes, that's very disrespectful. You need to take that off. Went back. I don't know if he ended up getting a ticket or not, but the police officer was not very happy with it. Okay. So like maybe you and I should have like a law enforcement podcast, like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type thing, or Miss Hyde, because you were on law enforcement and I like experienced law enforcement and just, trade stories back and forth. I'm sure that would be, I feel like I have 100 stories.
Probably do at least 100 episodes. Yeah.
Easy. Yeah. I can't even think straight. I'm thinking of like every single night at dinner for like 18 years. I have a story. It's like the most bizarre thing ever. And it
is fun when you go to conferences and they're like, well, tell us, what are some of your stories? And you can bust out like the real good ones. And they're like, oh my God, that was way more than I expected.
Like, I think I've shared this with you in the past, but with how long my dad was in for 35 years, and he was with the ATF and DEA, never fired his weapon on the job. Not once. Isn't that crazy? Like, I think that's more impressive than somebody who said, oh yeah, I was a sniper and I knocked off, there's never a dull moment in that position. So find something that not necessarily that you're passionate about, although it could be around passion. Find something that that like somebody could, like, I'll give you an example. And I know there are probably 10 bands out there that are probably at this level. If you've never been to a Dave Matthews Band concert, a Pearl Jam concert, a Fish concert, a Dead concert, a U2, Rolling Stones, Taylor Swift now, and Olivia Rodrigo, I think is definitely up and coming in regards to this level of a following. There is a community that exists in the grunge scene. And I think mainly because Pearl Jam is a lot, like everybody else has died. And like, it's weird to think that like all the big seven, like they're all dead, but Pearl Jam, and
Sure.
like literally dead, you know? And so we always go all over the place from Pearl Jam plays. We go to Wrigley Field, or we go to Vegas or LA, or, wherever the big shows are, Jenny and I will go. And there's always like one place in Facebook groups where everybody's like, hey, we're going to go to Murphy's by Wrigley Field, or we're going to go here by Madison Square Garden. And you go there and it's like, there are no introductions. Like you are in, because you knew that this was happening. You are one of us and you are in. It's like that in religion. It's like that in music. It's like that in sports. It's like that. I mean, where we live, right by the beach where we surf, there's no public parking. So the only people that surf on our break, we have like 3, gated neighborhoods right next to each other, are all the dads and groms, the younger kids that surf there. Like everybody knows each other. I don't know how many of them you would say there are, probably 50. That is a community. And if I only could sell to that community, that would be enough. Right. And surfing has, and I'm an average surfer at best, right? It has nothing to do with how good I am. It's just like, okay, well, you like this, we like this. So you're probably not going to screw me over. That's probably what they're thinking. Right. And that's how these one-off agents win, is because that probably not going to screw me over mentality kind of kicks in. So find something.
They connect with you on something deeper than, just surface nonsense.
That's right. And people have real estate amnesia. And what I mean by that is like, they don't remember how hard it was last time until you bring it up. And they just assume like, oh, well, I can find my home on Zillow. The contract's standardized. You'll tell me what to do and everything will just be roses. And in 30 days, we'll have a new home. And then they go through it and they're like, okay, I'm never going to bag on a real estate agent again because I wanted to quit. My own parents, they're on home like number 9. They wanted to cancel. I had to talk them off the ledge when they bought their second condo here in Carlsbad. And my mom said the same thing at the end, like, without real estate agents, there's no way any deal would close. Sharon talks about this. There is no way every deal would close, because at any given point, somebody gets disgruntled and they're like, whatever, I'm done. I don't need to buy this home. Cancel it, right? Those intermediaries are super important. And I think for the foreseeable future, at least as long as you and I are in the business, I think they're going to be a huge necessity to this. So find something that you can...
necessity, because I think, not to interrupt you, but I think, looking at, I do lots of talks on this about the generational change, from baby boomer and Gen X versus millennial Gen Z. Millennial Gen Z, they know what they know, right? And they're good at being experts at that. And they're also, owning the fact that, hey, they're not experts in this. And they want to pay the money to have somebody hold their hand through the process so they don't screw it up. And that is notably different than Gen X and baby boomers.
I told you before we started recording that our office is in a Spaces where the real corporate office for California is down in San Diego. And it's right by like the Star of India, if you know anything about San Diego, like, just outside of Little Italy. And it's surrounded by these gorgeous high-rise apartments and condos. And you don't know which ones are condos that you own or apartments that you rent. They all look the same. And so I'm walking downtown, not this week, but early last week, and I see a couple signs. So I just kind of jot it down on my phone. Other than having this office, I've only been there for a few months. We really never go down to San Diego at all. There's no reason for us to go down there. And I think it is the greatest. I haven't been in every downtown in this, but I've been in a lot of places. I think San Diego is the greatest downtown that exists in the country. Maybe New York City, parts of Manhattan, I would say would be better. But like, I love it. Everybody's happy. It's such a great community. But so I wrote these apartment complexes down, or these signs down, Alex, and I start Googling them. And like, I think 4 out of the 5 were apartment complexes. Only 1 was a condo. And the amenities in these apartments, like, I could not
ridiculous.
But you're paying for them. This isn't cheap,
right?
Yeah. But I called one just to say like, hey, a 3-bedroom, what would this cost to rent? And I think they said, oh, it was $5,900. And she goes, there are none available. And I said, well, how often do they turn over? And she goes, they don't. And she goes, and when they do, it's somebody that lives here that knows about it, that right when they say they're leaving, they're right there to take it. And I said, how long do people stay? She goes, we've had people that have been here for the entire 16 years we've been open.
Wow.
And she goes, because they just don't want to worry about all the other stuff. They like, when you have a gym and a pool and a movie theater and basically their own version of a WeWork and a coffee all in one place, like, not that you want to live in one building and never leave, but they make it so convenient And she did say, and I said, I don't know how we got to this point, but she said that one thing that she's shocked by is how young they trend and age-wise due to how much it costs. And I said, well, maybe parents. And she goes, I don't know. I think they're all professionals. She goes, we definitely have a lot of, self-employed entrepreneurs that work out of there, because one of the biggest things that people ask is, is their room big enough to work and put like a studio in or something like that? She goes, it comes up probably 40% of the time. And so I don't know that, I'm 44, right? I don't know that when I was 22, looking for something like that, I wish I would have lived in downtown San Diego at the time. I don't know that those would have been at the top of my list. You know what I mean? And I don't know that I would have tried to figure out how to make $3,800 and, to $5,900 a month in rent, work. I'm sure they have roommates, whatever that looks like. So I think that also the lifestyle of how they live is also significantly changing. Not necessarily a rent versus own conversation, but a what do I pay for versus what is convenient for me. And I think for a lot of people that look at the owning thing, especially on the younger generations, they struggle to find all those things with ownership, or that comes with like a $600 monthly HOA thing, right? So now they're like, well, yeah, maybe I'm going to make 10 grand a year, but this also comes with a $600 to $800 HOA fee. So that's getting eaten up, in that fee alone. So why don't I just go rent, right? So listen, I get it. Like Jenny's seen some stuff. We go downtown and
I think you see it too, though, like with the same idea, right? Like when you went to university, when I went to university, like the cost is radically different than what it is now.
$900 a semester is what I paid Arizona State. $181.16, I think, exactly, to go full-time 15 credits at Arizona State.
That's amazing, by the way, that you even remember that. I'm shocked. I have no idea what Indiana was.
Like my parents, they never even cared about a scholarship. Because, you know what I mean? Because it was so freaking cheap. Like, thanks for giving our son $986 a semester. Well, now it's $15,000.
Here's the thing: is like there's so many amenities that are tied to it. Right? Like the dorm rooms. Like I mean, there used to be at one point, right? There were like communal showers and stuff at colleges, right?
I had a communal shower.
Yeah, right. And so that would be absurd now, because like the folks, what they want is amenity rich, and more luxurious and more pampering, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, totally a thing. But I think that plays out though in our industry too, is that we are in a good industry because the ability to handhold people through the process that they're otherwise unfamiliar with or not an expert at, that's what they're looking for, and they're willing to pay more money for it, in their apartment complexes and their university and their service pros. Like they will pay more money if you're able to deliver.
If there is ever a way to sell real estate in such a way to where, imagine your real estate was one Bitcoin, right? And all you had this one Bitcoin that you carried around every day, and you said, I want to live in New York for a year. And so you take your Bitcoin and you give your Bitcoin to somebody else, and you say, I'm going to live in your home. You hold on to my Bitcoin. But when I'm done, I want you to give me my Bitcoin back, and we split the profits 50-50. So your Bitcoin's worth $100 today, which I just read that story about. You know that guy that bought a pizza with 10,000 Bitcoin back in you ever read that story? Oh my, he was like starving, and he's like, hey, whoever brings me a pizza, I'll give you 10,000 Bitcoin. It was worth like a thousandth of a penny at the time. Now it would be worth like 980 million or something crazy.
A lot.
Yeah, it's scary money. And, he still gets interviewed every year, about this story, right? But imagine you had this Bitcoin that was worth $100 and you gave it to somebody to hold on to while you use a piece of real estate. And then because of what Bitcoin is doing, that's increasing. When you're done using the real estate, they give you a Bitcoin with a fee taken out of that, for like a leasing fee to that. It would not surprise me that real estate ownership, like if somebody were to figure that out, that would change everything, because now you'd have the benefit of ownership. The people that you were trading Bitcoin with, to use that piece of property, you owned it while you were in there, you do whatever you want. And then if you improved it, there was some rules on that. That is going to change, because right now the 30-year mortgage is set up. It was set up on purpose by the banks, right, to make money. And, you needed that to make equity. People stayed in their home for 30 years. And at the end, it was paid off. You had all this equity, and that was like your retirement plan, right? Well, that usage, what do you call it? That instrument, the utility of the 30-year mortgage is pretty much pointless. There's no reason for it right now because, very few people stay for 30 years, right? So that part somewhere has to break, right? And I think the real estate agent community that understands that's coming, not that braces for that right now, because that would be a total mistake, but at least understands that, hey, like with Picasso, right? With fractional ownership, that's
Mhm.
kind of like a bridge to it. Because I think like I told Jenny the other day, I'm like, wouldn't it be cool to own like 5 fractional places? And she goes, no. I'm like, why not? That would be amazing to go to like Santa Barbara, then La Jolla, then Rancho Santa Fe, and like just surf at different spots. And she goes, huh. And during COVID, we talked about it because back then it didn't matter where we were, right? Now
Right.
it's, kids are in high school. It's a little bit different. The tech side of this is a niche just like anything else. And I know we're going like way left. If you've got time, we should keep talking for 3
Yeah,
more
man.
hours. No, I'm just kidding. But the niche part is so super important. So for anybody watching this and you're like, wait, they were just going to start talking about crypto and where it was going. I'm not, like, I own very little in crypto. And I don't know if Bitcoin hit 100 or 100,000. Yeah, I know it's close. Maybe it probably dipped since the last,
Give it a few weeks.
yeah, give it a few. I mean, it is crazy what is going on. And I think the markets are saying that once Trump gets in, there's probably going to be a Bitcoin run like there was last time. And you know that we're on, like, our kids will say, hey, do you remember back during 2020 to 24, like when this was still how we did things? I know we are in that time right now. I just don't know what that means. All right.
Right.
Okay. So let's talk about social. I think your example of being a niche is as good as it gets, right? So if somebody has any questions around, hey, I'm confused, I want to build a niche, or they want to learn about listing jet fuel or anything like that, best social handle they should use, where should we send them? And I'll put this in the show notes below.
Yes, check out Instagram at Alex Bracke, just like it's spelled there in the corner, at Alex Bracke.
I'm like super jealous that you have your name on anything. Like my parents didn't. We're not unique at all. Like I'm glad they didn't name me anything like John or Mike. That would have been a little harder, but I wish I would have had a unique name because I don't own my domain on anything. Okay, so I will put the show. I'll put link to listing jet fuel in the show notes below if you guys want to check that out as well. Alex, thank you so much for allowing me to take us down this rabbit hole here at the end. It's super.
My pleasure, man.
It's super interesting, and we used to say that it's the team and the rest. I don't think that's true anymore. I think it's the niche and the rest. I think is where everything is going. If we're not already there, it's totally going that way. So, thank you so much as always. Always great to talk to you. Any questions? Let me know. See you guys on the next one. All right.